Lios Enchim Anyavu. Greetings, everyone. May the Creator bless you all. And welcome to my podcast, the Good to E Medicine Podcast. I'll be your host, Pete Rodriguez.
All my native people stand up. All my native people stand up.
Well, my name is Nephi Craig. I'm White Mountain Apache on my mother's side, and I'm Navajo on my late father's side. I've been cooking 23 years professionally, and a big majority of that has been a focus on native foods. And I started out wanting to do, just studying classical French cuisine and other cuisines of the world. But all along the way, ever since I first stepped foot in cooking school, I wanted to do something with native foods, and didn't know how I would do it. But I made up my mind when I was young that that's what I would do. And it's just kind of grown over time. Sometimes I still feel like I don't know how I'm going to continue doing it. You know what I mean? But it continues to evolve. And the lessons that the food ingredients and experiences have taught me have been this really amazing, valuable education for me. And it's brought me to many different realms of education, learning, professionalism, all kinds of really amazing things. I grew up in Whiteriver, Arizona, on the White Mountain Apache Tribe. I was born there, and I lived there till I was about 10 years old or 11, and my family moved away to the Navajo Nation, and my family lived in Window Rock, Arizona. And I stayed there till I graduated from high school in 98. And then I decided to go down to the valley, go down to Phoenix. When I got done with school, I didn't know what I was when I got done with high school, I didn't know what I was going to do. I just was like one of those wild kids that was like, I'm going to take a year off of school and just get a job and do whatever, But that didn't work out well for me. I need structure and a positive work environment. So I had to end up, by the end of that first summer, I ended up having to make a decision on what I was going to do. And I just chose cooking school. I felt like it was something I had been doing all my life anyway, since I was a little kid, and I liked it. I didn't really apply myself as a teenager in high school. So I never took my SATs, I barely got out of high school, you know what I mean? And so I just decided I'd go to cooking school, see what it's like. And that's what I did. And I ended up really liking it. I really identified with it. I appreciated using my knives, get to play with fire and my knives and, taste all these amazing foods and, stuff like that. So plus I had been watching like that old show, Great Chefs of the World, on the Discovery Channel. And this was, the late 90s, before social media, before the Food Network. It was just an old show of chefs in their professional kitchens, just cooking a dish from all over the world. And it was really neat to me. It didn't show any of like the fancy kind of stuff, the environment, the luxurious part. It was just focused on the cooking. And to me, I thought it was really cool. So, it's like, hey, I could probably do that. Yeah, so I got into it and stuck with it. Just kept going and going and going.
Really quick, what school? I wanted to be a pilot. So, that's kind of weird because I don't see a lot of natives or Yaquis that want to, especially my tribe, they want to be a pilot, usually scared of heights or flying. But especially in our tribe, I don't know about other tribes, but I think it is. But culinary school in Phoenix, right? Which school? I'm just curious. Just which one? Did you go to a college or was it a school?
I attended a culinary program at the Scottsdale Community College. And okay. There were numerous other schools in the valley at that time, but that's the one that was within my means. I didn't have a large scholarship, and as soon as I got enrolled in school, I began looking for a job, and I was lucky to find one right away. I didn't know that the job I found was a very high quality job, that the chefs were well trained and traveled all over. We did a majority of stuff from scratch, and it was my first cooking job. So I just assumed that all jobs are like that. I'm an 18-year-old kid from the res. I got no clue what culinary culture is like. So I was in school. I was taking 17 credit hours full time in the day. And then at nighttime, I'd be working the line in a restaurant in North Scottsdale. It's called the Country Club at DC Ranch.
Nice, yeah. It's a nice area up there.
Yeah, I began working up there when it was all just planned communities, before any of that DC Ranch market was in place. The Greyhawk Country Club was very new. I saw a lot of growth over my time living in the valley. But I think right away when I got into school, I noticed that there was, I had this hunger and desire to learn about my own style of cooking. I thought maybe I'm going to a cooking school. They might know something about natives. You know what I mean? And when I got in, all we were learning about was classical technique, classical French, Mediterranean, Asian cuisines, and Italian cuisines, right? And so, but the majority of the training was classical cuisine or French cuisine. And so I was cool with that, it's just kind of what I gravitated towards. But I wanted to do something with native foods, and I just didn't know what that would look like. But I made my mind up early. I think when I was in cooking school, I realized that it was like one of the few times I heard people saying you could master something, like a master carpenter, master artist, master painter, you know what I mean? Master dancer, or kung fu master, you know what I mean? And so I was like, hey man, that's pretty cool. That's like that's how I equated that. The closest was like kung fu master, you know what I mean? Like spend your whole life dedicated to it. And that's kind of the impression I got. So I was like, as a 18-year-old kid and skater, and just kind of rebellious, I was like, screw it, man, I'm gonna do this for the rest of my life. I like it, and that's
awesome.
Yeah, I just decided to do that. And because there was no representation of natives and my instructors didn't know anything about native culture or cuisine, I figured I would just commit myself to it, and eventually over a period of time I would eventually climb the ladder, right? Climb the ranks and become a sous chef and chef de cuisine and executive chef, all those different ranks of chefs, and eventually become an executive chef someday, and I could train other natives. You know what I mean?
That's a good goal at such a young age. I'm going to ask you later, if you could motivate. I know you do that. I know you work with, it's called the Rainbow Treatment Center, correct? And and I know we asked you a question about addiction recovery, and that's a big part of what I do and I talk about as well, because I was I guess also recovering alcoholic. Also, I'm sober as well, and going on 5 years. It took a while, maybe half of my life, but yeah, that's another big part of the podcast and trying to reach people and tell them, hey, there's so much to live for. And, there's so much to live for and to learn and to give back. But the Rainbow, that's where you work at right now, right? You do have I know you're doing a couple of things, right? Is that where your main work as a chef, or is that the cafe? Maybe you could talk about both of those.
My journey with native foods is something that I'm really grateful for. I didn't plan to grow up and come home and be a chef at my local drug rehab. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Like when I was a young kid, I was really lucky to get some really high caliber classical training at a place called Mary Elaine's at the Phoenician in Phoenix.
Oh wow!
And I had when I was in school, our most disciplined and hardcore chef instructor he had worked at a place called Mary Elaine's, and he would always talk about it, reference it as being the best in our state and one of the best in the Southwest. And he would always, just encourage people to apply there and go there. And so, as a young kid, I was like, all right, hell yeah, I'm going to be like Chef Wayland, man. I'm going to go apply there. So every year from what time I got into school, I was 18, 19, 20, and 21. I applied at Mary Elaine's at the Phoenician, sometimes twice a year. And that place was super luxurious, very old school classical French, really big teams. They had numerous awards. Just if the Michelin system was in America back then, they would have been 2 or 3 stars easily, just because of the quality of everything, from the silverware to the servers' uniforms, and even the cookware in the kitchen everything was the best. And
Nice.
every year I'd go apply, and they'd always turn me down. They look me in the eye and
That's a good story.
right, kid.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
Here's the thing that about that place that kept me coming back every single year, besides knowing my chef instructor had worked there, is that, as a young kid, I was in a juvenile program in San Diego at Camp Pendleton on the Marine Corps base. I was a devil pup. And so I was out, I got to, I'm from a family of Marine Corps vets. My grandfather was a code talker. My dad was a United States Marine during the combat era vet, Vietnam vet era. His brother was a recon Marine. He was out in the Quang Tri province in 68 through 69 and other places. So I'd grown up around that characteristics of discipline and, tough as nails and organization, utilitarian mindset, and when I got to meet real drill instructors when I was a kid and as a devil pup, I got to, see real discipline. It's like I got to get a small taste as a young kid what my dad and his dad and his brother went through, as Marines. I got to stand in some of the same places on Camp Pendleton that they were at, so to me that was pretty cool. Yeah. And when I got into cooking school, then I found my first job, and I kept applying at Mary Elaine's of the Phoenician. I would go and talk to these chefs, and to me, when I got to talk to the sous chefs or the head chef, right, the look in their eyes, I recognized discipline in their eyes. I had only seen that in two other places in my life. One was in the Arizona Highway Patrol officers that I interacted with. Yeah. And the other was in Marine Corps drill instructors. Yeah. And I would look at these chefs and like, whoa, I could just see it or sense it because I had been in contact with it, and I was like, man, it is true. You can become a master. Because to me, that's what that represented, that steely eyed look, And so I was like, that's cool. I want that. I want that look, I want that discipline. So I kept coming back, and I, by the 18, 19, 20, 21, by like the 3rd or 4th year, I was about to just give up and say, I probably won't get in there till I'm in my 30s, man. I need more experience. But it just so happened that I knew someone. I was my sous chef at the country club at DC Ranch. Name was Rusty. He knew someone there who got me what you call a stage. It's where you go in and work for free for a couple nights. And I didn't know at the time that they were looking to fill positions. I just went for an experience just to see it for the first time ever. And after my stage, the head chef approached me and pulled me aside in the dining room and offered me a position. And I just freaked out. I didn't visually freak out. I was like, whoa. And I just on the spot, I said, yeah, I'll take it, chef. He's like, when can you start? I was like, tomorrow. He's like, no, do it right. Put in your notice with your chef, and then, come start with us in a couple weeks, 2 or 3 weeks. Yeah. I was like, all right. And so that was my departure from the country club. And I had been working at the country club from 98 to 99, 98, 99, 2000, 2001. And so almost 5 years consistently at that one place. And then I transitioned into this other place that I had been trying to get into. I always, because the Phoenician Resort, if you've ever seen it in Scottsdale, on Camelback Mountain, right? Mary
Yeah.
Elaine's is at the top of that really big resort. So it's kind of like it's like at the top of that whole thing. It's on the top floor. It's like at the top of the temple, you know? So I used to say it's like the temple of Shaolin, man. I'm going to get there someday and learn the secrets of Kung Fu with the masters. You know what I mean?
Yeah. That's amazing story. Love it. Love it. Persistence. So let me ask you, did you ever get that look? Do you still have that steely eye? Did you master it?
I don't know. I think so. I like to think I have. I've really remained disciplined. I've really remained as disciplined as I can. And when I got there, it was extreme. A lot of hazing, different forms of racism and biases, and really trying to test my threshold. And it was tough. It was really tough. It was so tough. I started losing hair right here on my head, you know?
I would have never guessed that. Wow.
But I eventually, when I got there, this isn't like, as it relates to native foods, my first night in the kitchen, I see two really powerful native foods on the menu, buffalo and Quinault River salmon. And I knew from my own study that these two foods were powerful, sacred native foods. And here they were being used on this menu, and they were being coined as modern contemporary French cuisine. And but no reference was given to the origins. And like on the salmon box, it said proud product of the Quinault, you know what I mean? Quinault River. And it had the Northwest art. I was like, man, that's native art.
Yeah.
And so that was pretty cool to me, man. And so I was like, all right, the native foods are being used at this level. And that was a really strong moment. But I would just stay and continue training. And I would stay there over a year. And I felt like that climb to get there, when I realized that I was just as good or better than some of the cooks in the kitchen from a production standpoint as a young line cook or a saucier. I realized, like, wow, man, I'm going to do something. I'm going to do something on my own. That's when I kind of went public with the concept of NACA, the Native American Culinary Association. And from there, that was like 2003. And I began to do independent contract work and just work for myself, start traveling and working and learning the best way that I could possibly understand our indigenous foods. Back then, I never hardly ever used the term indigenous foods. It was just like native foods, you know? And that would be from 2003 to about 2006, and coast to coast, a lot of grassroots work, a lot of community work, from restaurants to schools to working for free in parks. You know what I mean? It was like traveling into the wilderness, man. You know what I mean? And in 2006, I began to travel. I had built up, a body of work, and I was, continuing to do that and getting visible. And I eventually was able to travel and work in London, and then Japan and Brazil and Cologne, Germany. And so that was life-changing in itself, being able to go abroad and use native foods, and then also get an outsider's perspective of not only how people in other parts of the world view Americans, but also how they view Native Americans and how they view Apaches. You know what I mean? Like when I went to Germany and they found out I was Apache, they were just like mystified, and I just had to keep working, and then in Japan, I really appreciated the sense of minimalism and respect for ritual and technique. And when I was in Japan, I was, I took my skateboard with me. So I was street skating on the streets. Yeah. And I remember seeing old Japanese elders. They looked just like some natives from my community, man. I was like, whoa, looked like they could have been from like out in Crown Point or Chinle, or, they could have been from Whiteriver. You know what I mean? I was like, whoa, man, that's hardcore. But, and then going into Brazil, into Sao Paulo, and Campos de Guardo. I was teaching at Senaki University, and getting to see that this indigenous food plight was international. It was my first glimpse at indigenousness beyond North America and the United States, where I got to meet indigenous Brazilians that were doing similar work of reclaiming their foods for health through their restaurants or through their traditions. And that really opened up my eyes that there's we've got common allies in the indigenous world in the Amazon, in Sao Paulo, Brazil. And it's not just me in North America and us in North America. And that was kind of like the introduction to what we were fighting. That was my introduction to the international phenomenon of the monster of colonialism, and that really made a big impression. And I think it was when I was on my way back from Germany. I think I was sitting in an airport, or I think it was coming back from London. I was sitting in an airport, and I was just reading a magazine and sitting there just waiting. And on one of the TVs there, they were talking about a sports game back in America in the States. And this, I think it was a college ball game, or it was a large football game. But I remember the announcer saying, we've got about 40,000 spectators in this arena that's built for 150,000 people. It's not a large crowd today, something like that. But that number, what they said, 40,000 people, that stuck with me, because I was like, holy crap, there's only for us as White Mountain Apaches, there's 44,000 White Mountain Apaches enrolled. And I made that connection instantly just hearing it. And I was like, man, we don't even have enough people, White Mountain Apaches, to fill a football stadium. And that really kind of put a lot of weight and value to the culture, for me, for the first time. And it made it really kind of just instantly put this sense of urgency around the food knowledge and the experiences of trying to bring it back. Because we're just a small tribe compared to the world population, So a lot of experiences like that. And I would come back stateside and just be in Phoenix. And it was hard to find a job. It was around 2008 when the economy was in the recession and all that stuff.
Right.
And I was taking part-time work here and there and trying to source out consulting gigs here and there, but still studying the native foods and doing whatever I could. But then in 2009, I decided to come back. In 2008 or 9, decided to come back to the res, just because it was real tough down in the valley for me. And I heard that the ski resort that our tribe owned, Sunrise, was having a job fair. And I was like, cool, man, I'll go get a line cooking job. Very, very little responsibility. I'll just hang out, work the line, earn some money, then, head back to Phoenix in the spring,
Right.
And I got a job there as a line cook. And going into that kitchen at Sunrise for the first time, it blew my mind, because everybody, from the dishwasher to the chef to the manager and the wait staff and all the cooks, everybody was native. Everybody was White Mountain Apache or some other tribe. And that was what I was looking for all over the planet. That's what I was looking for, coast to coast, was to find a place that had people like me, that had a shared experience. And it was cool. But, the food was all powder mash and, frozen soups and canned ingredients. It wasn't very organized. It was a real beat up old kitchen. But the people made it special. And so
Right.
I would stay there for a season, and the chef position would vacate at the end of that year. And then I applied, and I got hired as the head chef. And that was in 2010. And 2009 or 10. And that same year, my father Vincent Craig, he was diagnosed with cancer. And by the time he was diagnosed, it was already stage 4. And from the time of his diagnosis until the time he met his demise at cancer, it was about 5 months. And that was a really, really difficult time. It caused me to question everything that I ever believed was sacred, everything from organized religion to cultural components of my Navajo and Apache side. And nothing could stop mortality coming up. You know what I mean? Nothing. And it was very tough. And so my dad passed away in 2010. And my dad was also in sobriety. You know, he had gotten sober when I was a kid. And so I had seen someone in my life get clean. And so that was kind of it was a really important part of my life, because you see, throughout all of that culinary journey that I was telling you about, going all these places and doing all this work, always in the background for me was substance abuse and chemical dependency that eventually evolved into addiction and alcoholism. And so my struggle, you know, to find connection and find myself all over the planet, it was, you know, substance abuse was always a part of it. And, you know, when I finally lost my dad, it was a really hardcore awakening. It was a moment that I realized, you know, one of my biggest supporters, someone that loves me and cares for me and always had my back when I was relapsing and trying to stay clean, he would always encourage me. And one of my biggest heroes, you know, he's gone. And it was like, it's like I had to learn to live again. And so in 2011 is when I got clean. After you know, a year of despondency and really intense, you know, grieving and loss and chemical use, I finally decided to get clean. And you know, I guess the reason that I share all this is because the theme of resiliency and tenacity and that characteristic that we have as Native peoples to never give up, to be passionately committed to whatever it is we're pursuing, that's a part of our bloodline, and that's a part of just how we're built. And so, like, I feel like that really was in the background that really helped me to never give up, to keep trying and wanting to get clean and keep working. And so I was finally able to understand that saying. I got sick and tired of feeling sick and tired. And I finally lived it, and I was just sick and burnt out and exhausted and spiritually bankrupt, man. And I was scared to, you know, didn't want to die, but I was terrified to live, you know, that old saying. And I just finally surrendered and said, you know, fuck this shit, man. I'm done. You know, Creator, help me. Like, I got nothing. I got nothing left. I got nothing else to do. All I got left is my knives and my experience. And, you know, I don't know how to do this no more, man. And from 2011, that's recovery has stuck. You know, I put in a lot of work to maintain my sobriety. You know what I mean?
Good. Powerful. Good for you. It's amazing.
Yeah, man.
It's an amazing story. Thanks for sharing. Definitely.
Yeah, and that leads me right to that question of how I come upon working at a treatment center. Okay. And so you asked to tell you a little bit about my work with the cafe and the Rainbow Treatment Center. After about 8 years of working at Sunrise, I felt like I had kind of hit a plateau, so to speak. During my time at Sunrise, we really used social media as a tool. We really got creative because we didn't have a large budget for food and opulence and luxury things. But what we had control over was our minds and how we were going to train and work as a team of Apaches in the kitchen. So that with social media, we really began to build this presence, and I revitalized Naka and started holding conferences, native food conferences. And we began to really build a foundation. We really contributed to the foundation of what you see in culinary arts for native foods today.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of the characters you might be able to find that are visible in the native food culinary world right now, a lot of them have been acquainted with our work or were at those initial culinary gatherings. But during that time, during those 8 years, I would be approached numerous times with opportunities to leave the res and go work on the East Coast or the West Coast and set up shop, set up my own restaurant or whatever. And my sobriety and the loss of my father and being in our sacred mountains and being in that kitchen, having, very little resources and having to be really creative by force, man, it caused me to witness the power of native foods in a professional kitchen and how it was building my staff, how skills would develop inside people. I would witness and watch people rise and fall and, see the firsthand the impacts of violence, incarceration, and addiction and alcoholism, in my staff on over 9 years, And so I began to see that side, but then also the power and potential of native foods from a spiritual component, because I was now aware of this and with my sobriety, and the hole in my heart that I was searching to fill, it got bigger when my dad died. And then I found out through work and experience and discipline that native foods and building a team and being in the mountains and studying and working with our indigenous foods really began to fill that void. And that was just an experience that I could not have ever anticipated. I would talk about it in theory, but now I was living it. And so when these opportunities would come, man, to leave the res and set up shop somewhere else, I turned them down because I felt like I didn't want to export my tribe's knowledge. You know what I mean? I feel like I didn't want to export the talent. I don't want to export native foods. I wanted to circulate this ancestral knowledge that was revitalizing and healing people and building the skills in their hands, with job skills. I wanted to circulate that in my community. And then plus it was native foods, man, that brought me to terms like decolonization and indigeneity. It was sobriety that brought me to mindfulness and open doors in behavioral health and all these really amazing things. It was the food that brought me there, not academia, And so I felt like if I were to leave, and I set up a fine dining restaurant like I wanted to, it would be more performative than impactful in a way,
Right.
So I never did, but eventually the opportunity came. The Rainbow Treatment Center was looking for they were looking for a nutritional recovery program coordinator, and I was aware of the position and some possibilities. And so I applied and I left the resort and I began working for the treatment center in the end of 2016. And so this is kind of been like, to me, it's a reflection of the prayers I had put down, and I consulted the mountains, because I was up at the ski resort. I was up at like 10,000 feet, and I'd go out at night and pray and talk to the mountains like they're my grandpa or my dad, and look at the stars. It's so crystal clear. And I just like, please, I still don't know how to do this, but I want to do something with native foods that helps us, let us stay disciplined and committed and tactful and have heart as we do this work. And over time, I guess, it paid off and I began working at the treatment center. But the cafe, the treatment center was securing a building to do something with it. And that's the old gas station that the cafe is in. So I was tasked with creating a concept for that integrates recovery and native foods and a vocational job training program. So all of my experience and my own sobriety and, that long journey, all culminates in the cafe, man. And you know what? I dig it. I love it. Like, I had no idea. I was afraid to move into substance abuse work and mental health because I felt like I didn't know how the two would work together.
Yeah.
But as soon as I got in, I started getting into the work and seeing like the application of the histories, the story, the foods, the taste memories, the smiles, the way people respond, like like when someone's real rough, man, and they're coming from the streets or they're getting out of prison, or someone's got a long history of trauma and violence in their lives and they're just rough and tough as nails, man. And then you come in and you teach them how to make an omelet for the first time. It's this transformational experience that lasts, and it's a skill you've given them, but they've also given you a lesson in humility. So it's that kind of thing. It was very difficult to find. And so now I found out I'm just as passionate for this work in substance abuse combined with indigenous foods as I am about professional cooking. It's like finding my first love was skateboarding, right? And then my next love was professional cooking, and then the third love of my life has been substance abuse work. You know what I mean? Like, or at least these passions. You know what I mean? These passions for wellness. And so, but I love it, man. I love it. I think it's life and death work. I think it taps into our indigenous strength. It's very poetic and tragic, but very packed with vitality and resilience at the same time. And I really hope that what we do, man, can make an impact, and we can work with other individuals to set up programs that are similar across Native America that do this kind of stuff, because this is just the tip of the iceberg. Substance abuse, that's just the tip of the iceberg of historical trauma. It's just the acting out part of this long legacy of colonization, man. So there's other forms and other types, but so that's kind of how I arrived at substance abuse treatment. And, I really like it. I'm a behavioral health technician and an advanced certified relapse prevention specialist. And, they're just going to keep pushing forward with all that work, man, because it's so cool.
Wow. Amazing story. Thank you again for sharing, Nephi. That's your legacy. That's going to be your legacy.
Yeah, I hope so.
Always got to leave. I always got to leave something for the next generation. I talk about it in podcast. Actually, I have a conference coming up, and you know what? I'd be honored if you'd be one of our speakers at the conference. Maybe we could talk about it off the air, off the podcast, but it's going to be about creating a legacy. A lot of people, like you said, they go through life, and at some point they have to realize it's much more. They got to leave something behind. Like when I changed everything as well, and it was like an awakening, like a new awakening. Like you said, you're like born again. But yeah, it's going to be a conference coming up in April. But yeah, I think you'd be awesome as maybe even a keynote speaker on that conference, because it's about legacy. So I think it'd be perfect. But yeah, that's an amazing story. Thank you so much. So yeah, like you said, the tip of the iceberg. I love that model. Maybe you can use that as for other tribes, because like you said, there's a lot of addiction and in a lot of different Native communities, and it's really bad, especially here in our tribe as well. But thank you for sharing that. It's so awesome. But I also was reading a little bit of key messages. So never give up. Key message. What about don't believe everything you think? Yeah, maybe. What about that? Don't believe everything you think.
Well, that's a phrase that I came across in my own recently as we're managing the pandemic, right? We're all quarantined, we're experiencing loss, there's uncertainty and doubt. And this also, for me as a person in recovery, I'm still conscious of managing the skills I built for relapse prevention, right?
Okay.
Because relapse went really high during the pandemic and a lot of other things across the country. And so, I'm just kind of doing my own work. And then I come across this phrase that says, don't believe everything you think. And to me, it clicked because I'm aware of like stinking thinking, I'm aware of like the low self-esteem issues. And years ago when I was trying to get clean, one of my recovery mentors told me, said, you know what, Nephi, you're future tripping, man. Think about it this way. About 80 to 90% of everything you worry about is not going to happen. And that stayed with me, And so when I heard, don't believe everything you think, that echoed back to that. So that statement is, when you're feeling anxious or you're worried and you're faced with uncertainty or stress or you're faced with change, don't believe all the thoughts you have because your brain is moving in all sorts of different directions. Just because you think it doesn't mean it's true. And especially about ourselves as individuals. When we doubt our talents, when we doubt and question our decisions, when we have these thoughts about failing our children or failing our culture, or, when we have these thoughts that can hold us back, just don't believe everything you think because most of it is not true. You know what I mean? And kind of just be kind to yourself and sort through it and just, trust that process of staying committed and you'll be all right. You know what I mean? You'll be all right. Just roll with it.
Good knowledge. I love that. Don't believe everything you think. Some people call it.
It makes me laugh because at least for me, I think all kinds of, dumb shit.
I know it can get to you, especially if you really, really. What is it, Abraham Lincoln, or what was that famous quote? Whether you think you can or you can't, you're right.
Yeah. Yep. Mm-hmm.
So just think you can do it.
Yep.
Or I
love your podcast, man.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Or imposter syndrome. You get to a certain level, or you get in front of whatever you're gonna do. Then you're like, man, am I good enough? You start thinking. Let that get in front of you in your head. I have all these degrees. I have all these certifications, all that, but then it's that little thinking, imposter syndrome. You get in front of these huge crowds or whatever, but it's that thinking.
And I think that's really important for our native audience, for our fellow natives, because we don't really see ourselves too much out there represented in the dominant society. When we do see ourselves reflected, it's usually because of like health disparities or social ills or statistics. You know what I mean? And so it's pretty common for us to doubt ourselves and to think us into paralysis. You know what I mean? So we don't take action. So this was like that message is like for all of us natives out there that are struggling to do good, and we've come from our own journey, and just remember you deserve to be happy and go for it.
Perfect. Love it. And you hit the nail on the head. There's not that many chefs, podcasters, people out there, and when they want to do something, they start thinking and doubting themselves that they can do that and be out there. Just recently, I'm on that Clubhouse app, the audio app, a lot, and it's just an audio only app. You just talk. There's no video, but there's some people on there that are just shy and they're native, because I created a club in there just for native indigenous communities, and they're shy just to even talk on the app, to turn on the little mic and talk to other natives. They're shy to do that. And I'm trying to encourage them. I finally encouraged one person. I said, just start a room on your own and just start speaking. If nobody shows up, nobody's going to know. It's just like the tree that falls in the forest, or whatever that saying goes.
Yeah, right.
But I joined her, and she's a historian. I'm like, you have a lot of knowledge to share. But she goes, Pete, I'm scared. I can't do. I'm like, oh my gosh. So I encouraged her. She started a room. It was just me. I said, encourage one of your friends to come in the room and talk. So there was like 3 or 4 people of us, but she did it. And she was the first one. And she has all this knowledge. That's her background as a historian. And she was talking about indigenous knowledge. That's her trained, I guess, profession, historian. And she had all this knowledge. And I'm like, you have to, start more rooms, start more talks. Don't be shy, and just get out there and do it. Once you do the first one, you'll just get better. And don't think, don't believe everything you think. You can do it. And then she messaged me later on, thank you so much. But those little changes, that's what I love doing. And another reason I started the podcast, and that's why I wanted to have you on here, because I knew you were going to have this, bring some good information, bring the heat. But thank you so much. Don't believe everything you think. I'm going to use that if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Cool. So lastly, I know we've been on here for a little bit, maybe an hour. And I do want to tell us a little bit about the telehealth workshops for an indigenous food health. If you could talk a little bit about that.
I do a lot of, prior to the pandemic, a lot of my work in native foods, for a number of years, there were very few spaces or organizations to carry it out. So I really had to create the space for myself and operate as an independent contractor and consultant. So I've got this long track record of working for organizations and agencies and schools and hotels, all over the country and other parts of the world. And so, I'm pretty experienced as an educator and speaker and chef trainer. As the pandemic hit, I was already familiar with distance learning and that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. So I was already familiar with using Zoom and those type of applications. So now I still I'm able to offer those type of services, and they could be cooking demos. Definitely always have a component of health. And with my culinary experience and therapeutic ability now and background, I do offer those telehealth services in indigenous foods. Could be recovery themed. It could just be general wellness. But they're always going to kind of be encapsulated around that the health components and the solution focused elements of moving our peoples forward with native foods as a skill set. You know what I mean? I do my best to be an educator that presents the knowledge and information with a lot of depth and weight to it, but in a way that is easy to digest, right? Accessible. So a lot of my training and workshops revolve around just doing my best to get people started cooking, because here's my perspective on it is, if I were to do a workshop or a class with all foraged, homegrown, organic, heirloom seed ingredients, it's cool and it's special and it makes my ego feel good, like I'm an indigenous revolutionary or whatever as a cook. But in reality, for the viewer or the audience, that can become a barrier, because not all of us in our communities have the ability to have access to land, to get foraged foods, or even have heirloom seeds. So my approach is to really focus on the fundamentals of cooking, the behavioral components of what's happening in a group or as an individual, and begin with indigenous food identification, and just really tie in a lot of those behavioral themes of wellness, nutrition, recovery, and indigeneity. So that's kind of what I do. Could be from 60 minutes to a couple hours, just depends on the organization.
Wow, another amazing. I love it. Telehealth workshops. I'm telling you, you need to come on Clubhouse with me. You'll love the app. and there's a lot of talks on there. It's like a live conference. You just go in there. I could go in there right now, and I can introduce you to people on there. And there's talks going on about in food, things you're passionate about, But thank you so much for coming on this podcast for sure. And I'm going to put your email or your social media, Instagram information on the podcast on the notes
Yeah.
when it comes out. So your message, hopefully it'll impact, I'm sure it will impact a couple of people, our audience, our listeners. I'm pretty sure hopefully they'll be thankful, and I'll put your information on the notes. So the podcast does go out on Apple, Google, Spotify, iHeart, and stuff like that. So it has a pretty good reach. Really thankful and grateful to our listeners. But yeah, we're coming towards the end of the episode, and I want to thank you again, Nephi. Did I miss anything? Maybe something, gosh, I wish Pete would have asked me this, or something you might have thought of while we were speaking today that you want to add or something?
Well, there's a lot more details to my journey, and I guess to sum it all up is just follow your passions, practice self-care, take care of yourself, and never give up. And us as Native peoples, when we're talking cultural revitalization and taking care of our health, and we're talking health disparities and revitalizing, this is all very, very serious work. But don't take it too seriously to let it weigh you down so much. Have some fun. Use that Native laughter that we all got. Bust out that Native slang and make some jokes and make some memes. You know what I mean?
Right, exactly.
Use all that really fiery laughter spirit that we got to poke back at the oppressor. You know what I mean? And have fun while you're doing it, because it's some really serious work that we're engaged in, and our futures are at stake. But, at the same time, that doesn't mean we can't enjoy it and be creative and be really creative in the work.
You're right. You're so right.
That's what will make it take root, is if it's creative and the young generation sees the hard work as fun, that's going to make it real. You know what I mean? When you add your own regional, tribal slang and funny humor to it, that's what makes it legit. And I just want to share that. And a big shout out to my son, Ari, and my little baby, Tawny, my little boy, Rowley, and the Apache Tribe, the Navajos. You know what I mean?
Yep.
They all made me.
Perfect. They'll be listening to this podcast once I drop it. Let them all know. Anybody else you want to shout out?
Yeah, just everyone that's in the just want to shout out anyone else that's doing the work. Could be it doesn't have to be foods. It could be one of the other arts, could be literature, it could be science, whatever profession, trade, or industry you might be in. Stick it out and get in it for the long haul, because we need you. I need you. You know what I mean? That's true.
Yep. We all need you. Perfect. Thank you, Nephi.
Yeah.
We're making a difference. So like you said, gotta have, it's serious stuff we're doing too, but it can get pretty heavy, the conversations, but I love having fun. Like you said, we had a conversation real quick. Who has the best fry bread? I know fry bread is not traditional, but a lot of the people I were talking to, they were saying the Dene have the best fry bread. And these were Midwest tribes and even Canadian. They all have a type of fry bread. It's called something else, but we were having fun. I said, gotta have fun. I know, and the consensus was the Dene, the Navajo fry bread, amongst the people who were talking. So I thought that was kind of cool.
That's funny.
Yeah. So lastly, Nephi, I'm going to ask you a question. We're going to have fun. I got this little little deck. There's some cool questions on here. These are just to have fun. Let's see what Nephi, other things he has. Well, I won't use that one. It's PG-13, this stuff in here.
Okay. It's good to know, I guess.
All right, let's do this one. It's just random. I picked it up. Nephi, would you rather go 30 days without your phone or your entire life without dessert? It might be easy. I don't know.
I could do without my phone, man.
Yeah, me too. That was an easy one, but yeah, that was an easy one, but we like to have fun here. I should pick another one, but yeah. So yeah, my phone, it's like, I know I do a lot of social media and I use it for the podcast, but really, I don't even miss this. I wake up, a lot of people check their phone and we tell them it's we do a lot of training here at the Yaqui tribe. And I say, you know what? Get rid of your phone, or at least put it away. But yeah, eventually when I get older, I'm going to just go off the grid. I'm not going to stop doing a lot of stuff that I'm doing, but I'm going to go off the grid, go live in the mountains somewhere in the desert, look at the stars. Because if no one's, like you said, if no one's seen the stars like out, up dark, really, it's so beautiful. It's so bright and the stars are like, just like right there. But yeah, just going to end the podcast. Thank you again, Nephi, for coming on the podcast, the Good to Eat Medicine podcast. I'm going to make sure we get your information on the podcast notes. And yeah, thank you. I always end the podcast with health is wealth, because I've been there and I know that your health is the most important thing you have right now. Because if you don't take care of yourself first, you can't take care of, I put it on Instagram, you can't take care of your family, you can't take care of your work, your job, your passions, do what we're doing if you don't take care of your health first. But yeah, thank you very much, Nephi.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me, and stay safe out there.
Yep, same here. Stay safe.